Hello.
Hey, hey. All right. Hello, I am Nazgir, your friendly neighborhood European moderator. Been playing the deck since a few months after it came out, and I've been addicted to it ever since. So, yeah.
Speaking? Oh, yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Beyond the Machina. I'm a moderator from the Midwest. I've also been playing the deck since the inception, more or less. I maintain the budget list for Krark and Sakashima, and I've been trying to... I was doing research on doing budget Krark Thash and budget Krark Silas, but I've been busy with other things. But, yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you very much. And I need to play the deck more than I do.
Same. Right. So, we'll be going through the presentations. I believe we'll be starting with Krark Sakashima, for which we have the lovely Google Chrome, the application itself. um,
I know. I'm a very quality AI.
this was a very long night in Vegas.
Y'all went to Vegas? I can only afford to go to Atlanta.
Hi. Yeah. Hello, everyone. How you doing? So yeah, I'll be presenting the Krark Sakashima. I'm allowed to share my screen, yeah? I'll be presenting the Krark Sakashima slide. My name is Google Chrome. I'm a Discord user, not an actual AI. You have all been fooled already. And I play in the Montreal region, and I have won a few events with the deck. Unfortunately, in our region, we don't play with Top Deck. We don't use Top Deck. We use another software. So EDH Top 16 does not show a lot of the good Krark Sakashima players that we have. There's 3 of them that play in our region, including Cilicia, which is in the Summit right now, and that have also won, I think it's a Plateau in the Badlands with the deck. So the deck list differs a bit from what we're going to present, but it's still pretty interesting. So I wanted to start by talking about why play Krark Sakashima. I think it's first of all, the most important thing, it's a very fun deck, and that's where its main attraction comes from. People are going to see it. They're going to have like the fireworks of, oh my God, every time they cast Rite of Flame, they cast Rite of Flame, and they're going to want to do that again and again and again. And I think that's the greatest strength of the deck, is that it's fun and good. It's explosive, as in you're casting one creature and suddenly you had a little goblin, and now your goblin is allowing you to make 100 billion mana, and that's crazy. It rewards stack knowledge, as in knowing when you want to counter something and being able to visualize, oh, this is a copy and this is an actual spell on the stack, and I'm going to cast Mindbreak Trap on you, and I'm going to put the triggers to get the trap back and then cast it again. Or Flusterstorm, where you hide the storm trigger after the Krark trigger so that I can take it back. I think that's something that's really interesting about the deck, and that makes it really strong. It's creature based, which means that it's a force of will check sometime of, I play Ashling, do you have force of will? You don't. I can now win whenever I want, which makes it hard to interact. And it's flexible, as in sometimes you're going to find yourself in a pod where you know you're going to be rule of lawed. You have entered a tournament. It's a TIM tournament. You're playing Krark, 3 TIM. You cry a bit, and you're ready to play Krark, play Sakashima, and opt once per turn, and be able to grind through that game. The weaknesses of the deck is going to also come from Krark being a commander that sometimes have to 50-50 a game, where you're going to be in a time-sensitive situation. It's like, I have to go now. cast a ritual, it has to be copied or else I can't go, and you're going to lose. But at the same time, 50% win rate is better than 25, and you probably should take those odds if you know that it's going to give you a win. Also, politicking is going to make it a weakness because most people will not know how to deal with Krark, and instead of listening to you and hearing how to deal with it, they will just kill it and not let you play the game. As in, that's easier than actually assessing the threat level. If you don't want to lose to Krark, you can just kill it, and he's not gonna win. But there's other people at the pod, and you're working with randomness, as I mentioned earlier, with the 50-50. Sometimes you may cast a free spell and end up paying 36 life to get Action Probe. Being a deck that can counter spells a lot and take back the counter spells, you're going to be priority bullied into having to use your interaction. And sometimes you're going to have to be the bad guy and be like, no, I don't want to counter this, or you can't play Magic because it's free for me to stop you from playing, which is a strength, but also a weakness, as in some players will not want you to be able to get to that point. So they will just stop you from ever getting a board. Forgetting your tokens, being killed on sight, and means that if you being killed on sight, as in the player, they don't want to hear you talk and play for 20 minutes. And forgetting the tokens, because if you can't represent your board, you're going to get hated on. And there's few cards that are like actually just good on their own in the deck. Every card is sort of synergistic. So if you don't have Krark, you might struggle to set up and actually be a menace on board. This is the actual deck that we have presented. We gathered the decks from 19 players that all play the deck somewhat often. They don't have to be tournament players, but this is what we have right now, going from cards that are played in every deck, such as Bergie and Soaring, to cards that are only played in half of the decks. Those cards being Krark Summit, Flare of Dupe, and Friction Metamorph. And that gives us an idea of what people are on. If we take a moment to look at the cards, there's cards like Ristic Study that have been cut from a lot of lists for being either people that are extremely based or just don't want to play Ristic Study, or decks that are casual. And at the other end, there's cards like VV or Electro that you can look at. VV on the top right and Electro like bottom right, that have very low tournament frequencies. This is from the CDH tool site that tells us how often a card is played. And recent cards are going to have a bias against them, and recent tech as well. Playing red cantrips is relatively new to the deck, so few people have not caught on to doing that or haven't started doing that yet, and that makes it appear less on the stats. And I think that budget is also something that matters, because Lion's Eye Diamond will not be on the list that we are submitting. So how to play, or what to expect from Krark Sakashima. It's a combo deck. It used to be like very stormy deck, but with time and with the amount of tools that we've gotten, it's almost more like a combo deck where you want a mana producer, a way to dig, and a way to cheat on Krark's ability. And that would be like a Harmonic Prodigy, a Bergie, and a Might of the Meek that would win you the game, essentially, because of the abundance of card that synergizes with what we got. So we have 10 spells that if you get them, you can make more mana with a Sakashima than what they cost. And I'm including all the rituals and an offer you can't refuse, because we have a lot of spells that happen to be kind of modal, where they have an utility, but we can also use them in another way. Like Brain Freeze with a Stormkin, it's just going to make us a lot of mana, and that's really fun. We have 15 cantrips that are cards that dig for more cards, and I'm not counting Archmage Emeritus or Impercruiter for an Archmage Emeritus in that. This is really like a Jeska's Will or the new Heroes Hangout. And if we have, well, all three pieces, which is a copy, a mana producer, and a cantrip, we're going to be able to dig at least 5 cards deep. And if we look at the cantrips abundance, 5 cards is usually enough to find another cantrips. And most cantrips in the deck dig more than 1 card deep. So that would allow us to churn through the deck pretty reliably. The main combo to finish the game is going to be Breach, Brain Freeze, Pedal, because we are not on LED right now. Dualcaster Twin Flame for an early win. And a fun thing about Krark is that you can reverse that. Just end step Dualcaster, go to your turn, and gamble. And you can also have Sakashima, a mana producer, and a Twin Flame to make infinite Krarks. And my favorite way to win the game is to just ask my opponents to stop playing Magic, because I'm going to take 10 minutes to play by myself, and they probably don't want to do that. We have 27 lands in the deck, 11 mana rocks, one of which is Relic of Legends, which is a combo piece with the Sakashima Twin Flame combo, because you can tap your Sakashima for producing mana. I don't want to say it out loud, but it's one of the best pieces of mana in the deck. It's a super great combo piece, and it's super sneaky good. And I don't want my friends that are listening right now to counter the next time I play it. There's 19 pieces of interaction, which is a lot, and it's really fun because we can always get them back, and most of them are free or very cheap, which is why we play them. We don't play them because they are counters or interaction. We just happen to play them because they're cheap and they synergize with the deck. So that's just good reason to play it. And we have 6 engines, which are cards that by themselves are going to allow us to dig. These cards are Ristic, Mystic, Flipside Burgi, the 2 Harmonics effects, and Archmage Emeritus that you can just slam on play and feel good about. So this is what we received when we had the stats done. We see that there's a lot of cards, and some of them don't even appear. And we had to decide what we are going to put on the list. So we looked at the cards that are not on the list, and we find unfortunate that these cards are not mentioned, because some of them are very sneaky good and deserve to be mentioned. Cards like Ragavan, Roaming Thorn, and Ruby Medallion are not new tech, but techs that are being talked about and discussed amongst the... I just looked at the chat, sorry. Cards that are being talked about and discussed and recently added. Personally, I'm on Ruby Medallion right now, and I'm trying out the Barbarian Ring tech to kill stacks pieces. It's really good, and yeah, there was a lot of cards. So what I think you... yeah, I got tagged and I was disrupted. So what I propose to you people listening to me is an exercise that you should do. As I mentioned, Krark is a deck that is fun and good. And to decide whether or not your spicy include should be included in the deck list, I think we should do what any sensible person would do, which is a graph on Paint. This is, I'm talking about Cackling Counterpart. Watch me. Cackling Counterpart, if you look in the middle, it's right there. This very professionally made image is showing you how to rate if your card is worth playing in your Krark Sakashima deck. We start on the bottom left with I play Sakashima for colors, which would mean that you wanted to play Is It Storm and did nothing further about what to play. And in these decks, we would find Hidden Strings to maybe win a flip on Krark. Is It Signet because you thought Signet meant color pairing, and Stormcrow because Storm is in the name. If you go up, there is, I will send it in the chat, yes. If you go up there, you can find Emrakul, because what's more fun than taking a 20-minute turn to pass afterwards? And Possibility Storm, because you want your opponent's Bird of Paradise to turn into a Drannith Magistrate. There's some other cards that we play on the Montreal meta a bit that I put in there. Still on the top left, being Vidalkin, Aether Mage, and Claim the Firstborn. Vidalkin was once used by Celestia to bounce the Sliver Overlord in the top 4 final, and I think they won the game, which means that the card was good and never played again. Pitches really well to Chromox, and Claim the Firstborn in a meta where there's 3 Krark players out of 12 in the tournaments is actually really, really good. A basic mountain is super fun, but turns out that Blood Moon is the reason you would want to play basic, so an island would probably be better. And then there's the semi-blue cards that are also really good, really fun, but they're barely off the cut. This is, by the way, subjective. Don't at me on that. In the middle, there's cards that are like kind of considered, but you would have to really have a reason to want to play it, don't at me, please. I'm gonna cry. There's a Kyling counterpart card that I haven't tried yet, but from what I've heard, allows you to grind value really well in a blue-based shell. And there's Ruby Medallion, the red cantrips that is kind of new, Treasure Soger. Cards that are good, but kind of on the line of whether or not we would want to play them. And at the bottom, there's just 2 mana value pieces, which are good cards, but at 2 mana on turn 1, we would rather usually play Krark than a Fairy Mastermind. And on the bottom right, there's the I really think Tymna and Crom would be better than flipping coins. I also really like filing my taxes and being responsible, which are cards that if we were to add white and black to the deck and have a maybe attack base game plan and rely on good card quality, we would probably keep. And in this case, we have to play them because we are still trying to win the game. And on the top right, you can see the Krark Sakashima community deck list, which is the entirety of the cards submitted. The cards in this rectangle are not that ordered because I didn't have enough space. But as you can see, every card that we put in the list that is not played in blue form is absolutely fun, perfect, and it's the epitome of being fun and good at the same time. I think that's a really wise way of putting it. I really suggest that you try to do this graph. It's incredibly fun. I had a lot of amusement doing it, and I think it really helped me visualize how I felt when I draw a card in a game. Like, do I like seeing it? Is it a good card? And should I kind of tinker with that and try to put something else in? I'm gonna get rid of that, and that's what I had for today's presentation. I think I went over pretty much the current Krark Sakashima meta. I think the deck is in a good place right now with the meta going faster and faster, and you can hear a lot online of don't stop others from winning the race, try to win it yourself. A deck that runs 19 pieces of interaction, not to protect, not to stop others, but simply because they're good cards to have and value pieces, will be really well set against decks that are going to be more on the greedy side of I want to win and that are vulnerable to being blown out. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Oh, my music was playing anyway. That's what I had. Thank you.
I loved it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm going to send the Krark Sakashima crew an exam during the week, and I'll grade it and send the best answers later on.
I posted and pinned the graphic in Krark Sakashima channel.
Yeah, I will also post that.
Is there a higher res version of it, or we're going to go with as low res possible?
No, there's no higher res. That's the best I could do.
Oh, that's even better. If Inked was still a thing, I'd say we get a playmat of it, but Ink's no longer around.
Oh, I could do that, actually. That'd be crazy. Wow. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm going to make a playmat of that. Okay, well, but thank you for having me.
Hello.
All right.
So I am Andera, or David. You can call me either. I have been playing Krark for several years now, and pretty early on, I started to focus on the other partners for Krark, other than Sakashima, the 3 color partners, which sort of distilled down to 3 main decks. Those being Krark Silas, Krark Thrasios, and Krark Tymna. So let me pull up just to sort of give an overview of, let's see here, and we can just do a slideshow here. So sort of an overview of each of those so you can kind of compare them. Most of you are probably familiar with Krark Sakashima, so I'm just going to describe it generally, By the way, this sort of post, the text here is pinned in meta and strategy if you want to reference it in the future. But the Krark Sakashima does the Krark thing very consistently, which really becomes very explosive as you accumulate storm pieces. And it's very consistent to that in terms of layering those storm pieces. So if you want to focus on that, it's really good for that. The weaknesses of it are the two-color card pool and commander dependency, but it does still have commander independent wins. And then I do generally recommend starting with that because it's easier to learn when you're focused on learning one thing at a time rather than learning all sorts of other things. Another one is Krark Silas, which is a very aggressive Grixis deck that kind of pivots between being a turbo aggressive deck and being a mid-range grindy deck, leveraging Krark, depending on the situation. So I would say that is a very, very adaptable deck to any situation. It's also the fastest, and that's largely because of the one-card win cons that it gets to run. Being in Grixis and having the special combinations of Krark plus Tainted Pact, which gets Thoracle and then exiles your library, which is just a one-card win, as well as Demonic Consultation, though that's a little bit more risky. But it doesn't have any card advantage or Sakashima in the command zone. So in dedicated mid-range games, it can struggle a little bit more than the others. Mulligans tend to be very strong because the Grixis card pool is really strong. But because there is no sort of backup plan in the command zone, it can be punishing if you don't get what you need in Mulligans. But the black tutors let you find extremely powerful cards and Rhystic Study, which is a disgusting card that I personally think should be banned, but it helps a lot in mid-range games for solving that problem. Krark Thrasios is super, super grindy. It can sort of pivot between a more reactive Thrasios plan and a more proactive Krark plan, depending on whether it wants to push through or sort of slow down and stabilize the board. It focuses on mana generation because mana can just turn itself into cards through Thrasios. And most of the win cons involve generating infinite mana because that's just easier than assembling a win outright. Mulligans are very forgiving as long as you can make enough mana. Just being able to fix those hands with Thrasios activations is really nice. It's really good at politics because the longer you can extend the game, the stronger you become in the pod. You can really, really win those long games where maybe you deploy a Seedborn Muse and a Kinnan and all sorts of other stuff. It is, however, in my opinion, the hardest deck to pilot because the tutor ranges for every single tutor in the deck, which it has a fair number, find different things, right? Spellseeker finds spells with mana value 2 or less. Mystical Tutor finds any instant or sorcery, but puts it on top of your deck. Worldly Tutor, same, but for creatures. And like Neoform finds a very specific mana value, etc. So that means every single tutor you have to approach how you play it differently. And that's really complicated. Also, the politics are super important for performing with the deck, which is yet another skill that you need to learn. But in my opinion, this is the most fun of all of them because of all that complexity. And then finally, we have Krark Timna, which is a very aggressive deck, but it's leaning much more into a mid-range plan. So it's a very proactive but grindy deck. And it is it snowballs really, really well because Timna just keeps refueling you with cards. And because of Timna, like your mulligans are super consistent. You could mulligan down to a 3-card hand that consists of 3 lands and recover from that because you would go turn 2 Krark, turn 3 Timna, and just start drawing cards and get crawl back into the game. So that can be really, really useful. And it also has a lot of protection for the win attempts with Grand Abolisher and whatnot. But it has some trouble interacting with opponents, particularly on the stack, which can restrict politicking and can make it harder to win versus certain pieces of interaction. So, like a silence is really difficult to deal with in Krark Timna because it doesn't have Born Upon a Wind, for example. It doesn't have counter magic to counter the silence. It's also slower at pivoting to a win because it doesn't have the 1-card win cons in Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation. And the breach line, I mean, Brain Freeze is just the most efficient breach line. So it can be a little bit. Yes, Shaka pointing out for in Shaka's experience, it is really good at politicking. And I think that really depends on how you politic. And how opponents interact with you and how you define politicking. But Shaka will describe this. Will describe this in more detail when they present. The deck punishes greedy mid-range opponents super effectively, where they'll just be like developing and holding up interaction, and because you have Timna for cards and Krark for pushing through interaction, you can just develop super fast and outpace most mid-range decks. Like I said, mulligans are forgiving. And personally, my opinion is that if you hate politics, like if you hate these static, game going to time kind of scenarios, then Krark Timna, I mean, being able to push with Grand Abolisher lets you just ignore that when you want to. That is my summary of all of the different Krark partners. Hopefully that gives you sort of a overview of them and sort of how you could compare them. And then if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those before I move on to talking about Krark Silas in particular. Just looking at chat here. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna switch over from presenting this over to presenting Krark Silas. So, like I said, Krark Silas is slower, and this is the deck that I have the most experience playing in tournaments. So that's why I'll be presenting this. And I think it really performs very well in tournaments because of its flexibility. But Krark Silas is slower, but it's more resilient than Rock Silas. I mean, Rock Silas is built for both speed and the ability to pivot a little bit between going all turbo and going mid range because it can just tutor Rhystic Study. Again, sorry. And then it's the deck is faster than Krark Sakashima. Again, the 1-card win conditions and black rituals and stuff facilitate that, but it's not as explosive. You don't get to layer the Krark triggers and those storm synergies the way that you could in Krark Sakashima, which hinders your explosiveness. It's more interactive because it has counter magic, but it has a lot less momentum than Krark Timna, the Krark Timna snowballing. And then it's faster than Krark Thrasios, but it's a lot worse at grinding into the mid-range. You don't really want the game. You don't want your opponents to stabilize and develop all of their engines that you don't have in the command zone. The strengths, I would say, it's very adaptable. Any situation, you have a black tutor to solve it. You have a black tutor for the card in your deck that solves that problem. You can make really early aggressive plays, and the Grixis has great card quality, as it's famous for, and you just get to tutor broken cards all the time. You get to tutor just the absolute most busted cards in the format. The weaknesses, it's non-deterministic, which turns a lot of people off, a lot of non-Krark players. But I suspect that will not turn off any of you if you care to try the deck. The deck is very complicated. This is because the deck plays very differently depending on whether you have Krark in play or not. And you have to plan around whether your the two scenarios, which is that your spell bounces or your spell copies. If you're planning ahead, trying to strategize, you have to make sure that you're planning for both potential outcomes, which makes piloting the deck very difficult. Like I said, it's less grindy than other options just because the command zone, and it's less consistent at storming off than other partners. Some tournament statistics. We have 7 people who shared their record. A total of 290 games, 51 tournament entries. Among that, 23 top fours, and 9 tournaments won. We cut out some of the 16-player tournaments and whatnot to trim it down to this for some more reliable statistics. This presents an average win rate of 37%, draw rate of 24%. This is significantly different from what is reported on EDH Top 16, with a 26.12% conversion rate. If you were to compare the top 4 rate up here with that conversion rate down there, you'll notice those are very, very different. And part of that is, a selection bias in terms of who is reporting their tournament performance. The people involved on this server are likely going to be more experienced. Moving on, how do you play it? Well, you got the 1-card win cons. You got where you copy the Demonic Consultation or the Tainted Pact into Thoracle. You can do copy Demonic Tutor, and then you get literally any 2 cards you want. Anything. So me, I'm on Ad Nauseam, so I could get like Culling the Weak and Ad Nauseam. Or someone else might get like Entomb and Reanimate and go for double Entomb, double Reanimate, or anything like that. You have the win buttons, as I like to call them, Ad Nauseam, Necropotence, Bolus's Citadel, all of which, if you just resolve it, you probably just won the game. The deck can win turn 2 with the right mulligans, the right hands. So, for example, maybe turn 1 Krark into turn 2 a 50-50 on Demonic Consultation. But by turn 3, you should be able to consistently present a win. Like I said, it can adapt to the board state. So you can choose whether you want a fast hand or something that's going to perform better into a mid-range state. It's commander independent, so if people just remove Krark on site, that's okay. You got Grixis deck, you got 1-card win cons, like you don't need your commander. And something I've found kind of puzzling is that despite the fact that we're in more powerful colors, because they are more afraid of our colors than our commander, they tend to not remove our commander, which is weird if you think about it strategically, that they are targeting you less because you are more threatening. But it just tends to be how I've seen opponents act in response to the deck. You can grind with Krark. You have Krark, you've got Harmonic Prodigy, you've got Stormkiln Artist, all that classic, good, powerful Krark cards. and you can really take advantage of that in long mid-range games, which is really nice. It means that you can stay strong throughout the whole game instead of just relying on performing well earlier in the game. And you can pivot. You can blend, because it has a blend of turbo and mid-range pieces, you can choose which of those you tutor with your tutors. Do you want to get a ton of, like, do you want to tutor Harmonic Prodigy and Tavern Scoundrel? Or do you want to tutor Necropotence and Born Upon a Wind? All that kind of choices. Black tutors make that super flexible, and double tutors really enable pivots, right? Maybe you were pushing aggressively and now you want to pivot into the mid-range game. Bam, you got 2 mid-range cards and you're good to go. How to play the game early in the game, or sorry, for mulligans, you want to think about the pod. Maybe you have 3 super grindy mid-range decks. And so and depending on how you think they're going to play, maybe you feel like pushing early is just your best option. Then you want to mulligan into a very aggressive early hand. If maybe someone else is a turbo deck that's faster than you, then maybe you need to mulligan and keep some interaction. Just make sure that your hand has a plan, because top decks are going to be very unreliable. They're going to be very strong, but they may not be what you want. You may go 5 cards before you hit something that can draw more cards, and fizzling out like that could leave you dead in the water. Early game, you want to accelerate into something super strong. So maybe that might mean turn 1 Dark Ritual Necropotence, right? Or maybe that would mean Rhystic Study early, turn 1, turn 2, or whatever. You just want to do something powerful. I mean, you're in Grixis, you've got lots of powerful things to do. They could be different things, but you want to do that early and effectively. You want to read the table. If there's a ton of interaction, then you need to focus on setting up a board state that can beat that. If you early game, you have to kind of decide when to focus on pushing or grinding, and then later layering Krark synergies can set you up to push through lots of interaction. Hoarding resources again helps you set up for pushing through interaction. And acting at instant speed makes it a lot more difficult for mid-range decks to pin you down. They're going to be really prepared for you to push on your turn, but at instant speed, and especially at the end step before your turn, they'll have a much harder time, right? If they stop you in that end step, then you get to untap and go again. Overall, I'd recommend, taking risks, calculated risks, good risks, because this deck really rewards you for that. Because you can do so many different things, and Krark could generate a lot of value through taking those risks. So overcome your fear. Finally, this is sort of a theoretical thing that I put together about the differences between a lot of the different Krark lists. We have the cards, or the cards that are sort of universal across all Krark decks. With the 1-card win cons that I mentioned, Krark's explosiveness from the command zone, the Grixis card quality, and being able to tutor anything. And then you have, turbo, which is pushing early or pushing often, mid-range, which is developing value engines, and sort of a flex, which is where I'd put my list, which is focused on adapting to the pod. Every deck is going to pull from all 3 of those. But each of them, there's trade-offs between focusing on each of these different plans. You can see some of the cards pulled from each of those different archetypes behind them. So turbo, you're pushing early, you're pushing often, you're leaning into Grixis, right? You've got wheels, you've got Final Fortune and Grinding Station. You might see a lot more borrowed from Rogsai. You overwhelm your opponents with threats. You just keep presenting threats until you push through all the interaction that they're holding up. You can protect wins with your counter magic and prevent stabilization of the board, where the mid-range decks will start to control you and start to prevent you from pushing. And then in that context, Krark provides resilience to the deck, so that if your opponents accumulate resources, you still have an effective game plan. For mid-range, you're focused on developing value engines, like I said. You're leaning into Krark synergy. So that might mean like Harmonic Prodigy, Tavern Scoundrel, which are in all of the different decks, but maybe you're relying on them a bit more. You're hoping to develop them more quickly and layer them more effectively. You're overwhelming with your explosive development and resources. You're in Grixis, so you can develop absurdly broken pieces, and you can accumulate lots and lots of resources, mana and cards, very efficiently. And you can use that interaction that you've drawn into those resources for political gain. So maybe you're leveraging, you could even leverage the fact that you're a threat into convincing your opponents to let you do something a little bit less threatening, but still advantageous. And you're really using Krark to exploit those mid-range games. For Flex, like I said, you're focusing on adapting to the pod. In terms of deck building, you're trying to maximize flexibility as you're going through the game. So you might see some of the cards in the background, which either they're super powerful cards for a specific situation, or they're cards that are kind of let you choose whether you want to use them to in a very aggressive fashion or in a fashion to grind. And you're focused on capitalizing on opportunities. So early game, maybe you notice that no one has interaction, so you capitalize on that by grabbing a big threat or mulliganing for a big threat and presenting that early. Or maybe you notice that the game's getting a little grindy, and so you go for more of a mid-range plan. And you're focused with interaction on creating vulnerabilities in the game, in your opponents, creating opportunities to push or otherwise control the game. And in this context, Krark gives us options, because we can both choose um, you can both choose what you tutor for, whether you go for something very aggressive or mid-rangey, and then also you have a choice of when and where to deploy Krark. If you deploy Krark early, you're probably going for a mid-range plan. If you don't, you're probably going for an aggressive plan, like ad nauseum. You don't want Krark in play when you're casting that. And that is the end of that. All right. Did we have any questions here? Let's see. Da, 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 da. Okay. uh, how does this beat Orcish Bowmasters? Um, so, yeah. So Orcish Bowmasters can be annoying. That's specifically annoying to the mid-range plan, where a lot of our grindy pieces are creatures, but not all of them. So, for example, Rhystic Study doesn't rely on being on a creature, nor does Necropotence. The life loss is annoying, but it's not the end of the game. So and you still have Deflecting Swat, which you can tutor, or other removal. So it's not the end of you playing Park Silas. And honestly, that's one of the advantages of playing Park Silas, is that if someone is controlling the board with Orcish Bowmaster is you can just plan around it and not go that direction. What else? Silas synergies. Yeah, so some people run a few Silas synergies. So, for example, Entomb can be used with Silas to tutor up a Bolus's Citadel or a Defense Grid or a One Ring. Any of those is an option, specifically because of Silas. So Entomb is much stronger, or at least a little stronger in this deck than it is in others. But it is slow, because you need to cast a 3-mana commander and then wait a turn and swing, which may be too slow or too vulnerable to interaction or what have you. But it is an option. Silas isn't useless. It can also be a blocker with a Death Touch, which scares off most people. And yes, which like Shaka said, there's like Bauble and Chrome Star that you can play and recur with Silas to draw cards. What is my favorite spicy include? I would say Gale, maybe. It's I don't think it's an auto include by any means, but it can be wondrously fun, just storming off with your graveyard. I mean, this is because you have like Dark Ritual and Demonic Tutor, and so like recurring those is super strong. Just getting to play black rituals into black tutors into black rituals over and over again with Gale and Krark, can be a lot of fun. Can be strong in mid-range games, although Gale is pretty dead early game. Yeah. Oh yes, there's a lot of other people, like Fellow says, there's a lot of people who like playing Villas. And that's because reanimating Villas is very, very strong. Because you lose the 8 life uh, after Villas is on the battlefield. So you just immediately draw 8 cards. And then you have the Phyrexian mana costs and all that draws a ton of cards. But yeah. All right. It seems like I don't see any other questions. If you have other questions, feel free to put them in chat. But hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. I don't know if we want to move on to do we want to move on to like Krark Thrasios now? Yeah. Yeah. Yep, happy to. So I don't have a slideshow for that. But I can, yeah. I don't have a slideshow for that, but I can pull up just
Chrome
like
has a
a
question.
Oh yeah. Let me open that up. Okay.
Typing it.
Go for it.
Once again, you've continued the legacy of really good graphs, and I'm thankful for that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I will say the first graph was a little bit more amusing. Your graphs were more informative.
Draft not even once.
Here, I can just pull up a Krark Silas, a new bread bank list, and present
Will you
that
go for
real
the one
quick.
card win con? How often are you getting blown out? Is it a risky line?
Hmm. Um. Yeah, so that's true. That absolutely can be risky. Cool. Getting blown out can be risky. Yes, absolutely. That's part of the reason why, I mentioned that taking risks tends to be rewarded, because you're not always going to know whether you have the win or not. But you won't really know until you try. And the more experience you have, the easier it will be to tell whether or not you do have the win, whether it is an opening, whether it is a window or not. And you can recover pretty efficiently. Just that because the card quality is so high, with all the tutors and rituals and one card win cons and all that, you can present, back to back wins quite often. So, and then you can also pivot pretty well. So it is risky, throwing that ad nauseum onto the stack. My heart jumps every time someone pauses in response to that. But overall, it rewards taking risks. Is what I would say. Yes, like sports says, like they say, uh, there are opportunities for them to blow you out. If you went for the one card win con with Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation, and they don't counter that, they counter the creature, which is less common, but it is possible. That could just cost you the game. Although it can be another fun one is submerging the Thoracle after that on end step, where everyone thinks you're going to die. That one's fun. But yeah, there's it can be risky, and that's one of the hard parts about piloting the list, for sure. Yeah. I guess I'll just show you the deck a little bit. So we've got, Krark synergy pieces, Bergie, which is absolutely amazing. The backside of Bergie, Harnfell, is just absolutely broken. Especially like you chain a vapor back a bunch of stuff and then just pitch it to Harnfell. And then every time you cast a card that bounces back to your hands from exile, then you can pitch that spell. So you can generate absurd advantage with Harnfall. You have some generic Grixis stuff. Uh, nothing huge there. Yawgmoth's Will is really strong. Anything that you cast from your graveyard with Yawgmoth's Will actually bounces to your hand with Krark, which is again a really neat interaction. Although resolving the Yawgmoth's Will into Krark can be a pain. Free interaction, Grixis good stuff. Just generic stuff. Necropotence is in most lists. Most lists are running Necropotence. These are the four like win buttons that you kind of have to choose from. You can't run all four. There just aren't the resources in the deck to run all four. You'll just end up flooding your hand with cards that you can only cast one of. But all of these are super strong. If you resolve any of those, you probably win. So yeah, that's most of the deck. Necro Dominance. So some people are on Necro Dominance, not very many, but some. I personally don't like it because it doesn't allow the play patterns that I want, that I rely on with Necropotence. Specifically, you don't get to do breach lines. You don't get to act in your cleanup. You don't get to sculpt to 7. You have to sculpt to 4. And there's some other shenanigans you can't pull off with Necrodominance. But if you want to lean into the Necropotence lines and really just you like that line, you absolutely could run both Necropotence and Necrodominance. It's a valid choice. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. Uh, yes. Ad nauseum is a big like choice whether you run ad nauseum or not, because that's going to affect your other card choices with the mana value. Yeah. All right, I'll move off of this and go over to a Krark Thrasios list, and we can talk about that a little bit. I don't have a full presentation on it, so I'm just going to talk through the card choices. Why Villas over a Brood Lord or something else? Interesting. Yeah, no problem. Interesting. Um, so personally, if I were to make an argument against Brood Lord and for Villas, it would basically be you're putting a lot of resources into getting a hoarding Broodlord that doesn't really net you more resources than you put in. And a lot of the cards that you would put in the deck to support Broodlord are not good on their own. So Saw in Half, in my opinion, is a bad card in Grixis. I know it would be amazing in Krark Sakashima, but it's bad in Grixis, where we don't really want, like, if you were to look at the creatures that you run, it doesn't really go very well with most of the typical creatures you're going to run. So that would be my argument. Also, that like copying a lot of those cards, like they're already winning by themselves. You don't need to double up on them in order to win. Oh, another point to make about a lot of these about Krark Silas is that unlike Krark Sakashima, you don't really need or even want to lean into the Krark multiplier uh, lines. We run Harmonic Prodigy and a couple people run Varen just because they're really efficient. But I'll note that they turn off the one card win cons with Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact because you copy bounce, you only get one thing. So if you get the Thoracle, you might not exile the rest of your library. And you have to make that decision of what you get with the first one before you see the other flip. And so that it becomes awkward. But it does, really enhance your storm plan and your ability to push through interaction. Yeah. All right. Let me present Krark Thrasios. Yeah. Okay. So Krark Thrasios, like I mentioned, is sort of a layered storm deck, super grindy. And you'll see a fair amount of overlap with Krark Sakashima in terms of card choices. But there's some additional things that you get to run in Krark Thrasios. So, for example, Displacer Kitten, wherein Krark Sakashima doesn't have sort of a consistent enough payoff or the ability to tutor Displacer Kitten uh, well enough to have that be a core part of the deck. In Krark Thrasios, we can find Displacer Kitten, which means if we have another piece, we can assemble the combo. And it's really nice that it's a entirely creature-based combo. So, if for example we assemble Eternal Witness plus Displacer Kitten, them countering the spell is basically irrelevant. You just keep looping, right? The loop isn't stopped by a single piece of counter magic unless it's countering a creature. So that's really nice. That's one of the big synergy packages that most people are running is Displacer Kitten and some stuff with ETBs, which can get really out of hand really quickly, and just win as a 2-card combo with pretty much any of those. You'll notice there's more mana generation, right? We've got Dorks, we've got Goblin and Archimancer. That one's a lot of fun for snowballing really quickly. We've got Kinnan. We don't have like Basalt or anything. This is just sort of value to go with the treasures and Dorks and Mana Rocks. that the deck makes, and like multiplying the amount of mana you get from that. You got some basic rituals and stuff. Land grant, I love being able to tutor a land with a spell, and also being able to choose to fail to find, so you can use it to just keep looping free spells, with like Kitten and Eternal Witness, for example. So it's both a combo piece and sort of a card advantage, getting you more lands, which are really important in this deck. Land drops are super, super important because of Thrasios, because feeding mana into Thrasios is so central to the long-term plan of the deck. We've got Twin Flame, various stuff like that. Oh man, resolving copy Justice Will is just bonkers because you can just feed the red mana into Thrasios. So if you make 14 red mana, I mean, worst case scenario is you just made 3 Thrasios activations and exiled 3 cards. Yeah, it gets nutty real fast. You got free interaction. Summoner's Pact is a great way to convert Spellseeker into a creature deterministically, and especially, comboing with Displacer Kitten. Crop rotation, man, Gaia's Cradle is a strong card, as is either Emergent Zone or Alchemist Refuge, which everyone's on one or the other. It's kind of up to you which one you want to run. But that's really nice. Shifting Woodlands as well. We've got Essence Flux for flickering, free interaction, Manamorphose, Court of Calling. Copying Court of Calling is usually a win. If X equals 3, it's usually a win. If X equals 4, it's definitely a win. Some rocks. Candelabra. A big reason why we're on Candelabra is because it's a flickerable way to untap Cradle and other colors of mana with one card. You can also find it with Urza's Saga if you run it, Trinket Mage if you run it, but overall it's just a very, very flexible card. And it can convert colors, from colorless or green into red and blue, or red into blue and green, whatever. Yeah. That's most of the deck, in terms of card choices. In terms of playing it, you want to play to the pod, and instead of choosing between turbo and mid range, this is more just choosing between the Thrasios grind plan or the Krark proactive plan. So it's sort of like reactive versus proactive, depending on which way you lean, both in deck building and in game, which one you're casting, although usually you're casting both, which one you're leaning into, and that depends on the pod. Early game, you just want generally some sort of mana turn 1 if possible. Turn 2 is probably cast a commander, hold up 1 mana for interaction. Turn 3 and beyond, you're assembling some kind of engine using your the rest of your deck, your storm pieces, or like Seedborn Muse or what have you, to take over the game. And you want one thing that I would recommend if you're playing this deck. Well, first off, definitely goldfish it, because the lines are very challenging to remember or to create on the fly. But also, to not overdevelop. You don't want to be the threat at the table unless you are truly ready to win. You want other people to be the threat so that you can leverage that, to get what you want from the game, which is to extend the game and accumulate resources. Is there anything else about the deck? That's most of it. Any questions? Let me see if there were any questions here. Yeah, Atali is an interesting choice. It's certainly a ton of fun, and there's a fair amount of synergy there, right? We're on Twin Flame, we're on Essence Flux, we're on, other storm pieces. Displacer Kitten just wins, basically. Um, like Displacer Kitten, Atali, that's just a win. But 7 mana is a lot of mana for a threat. So it's anything above, I would say anything above 3 mana on a permanent is a choice, is something that you're committing the deck to, rather than just something you're adding to the deck. So if you were to run a Tali, you'd probably have to cut like Roaming Throne, or maybe I don't know, something else expensive. Another thing about Krark is in terms of deck building, it's really complicated. There's a lot of sort of packages of cards that synergize with each other, so that like cutting one card kind of means maybe you should cut 3 other cards, which maybe means you should cut 7 other cards. It just sort of chains like that. Like if you were to remove Displacer Kitten, then you'd probably be removing like maybe Eternal Witness, uh, Dual Caster Mage, because that's no longer really worth running on their own. Just as an example, or uh, maybe you remove like Archmage Emeritus and Vivi. Now suddenly you're not running very many wizards, so now you need to cut Step Through, um, and etc. So the deck is very layered in that way, in that there are just you keep peeling the onion from cards that you're cutting, or adding. They all kind of synergize with it, and that's because it's a teamer deck largely, because the tutors are so scattered, so varied, um, that the deck kind of needs to be redundant in specific ways. All right, what else? Having PhDs do need to play this deck. Yeah, it's a challenging deck for sure. I mean, I don't, you know, I feel like I'm kind of getting the hang of the deck finally. And that's after a very long period of time of playing the deck. Um, Playing other Quark decks helps a lot. But learning how to politic, I mean, just really effectively politic to extend the game is really important. And learning the lines of which, here, let's look at Spectre's. Let's see. I have. Let me stop presenting here. Spectre's primer. Let's just fish. We can look here. So this. Let me just share. Cool. So this is Spectre's primer, which is very in depth. I mean, you can see over here just how in depth this is about everything. I mean, this is really, really, I don't know, well written, and detailed about everything, right? We've got stuff on, the deck as a whole. We've got like some basic combo pieces analysis, flex slots, tutor ranges, the odds of things, mulliganing depending on pods, the crop rotation, other various spells, examples for winning the game, because there's so many different ways you can uh, like lock together different pieces to form a win, or chain them into a win, that it's impossible to list them all. But this gives you some ideas of how you can. And then as you play the deck, you'll just sort of naturally stumble on other ones that crop up in the game. I mean, it's just there's so much here. so much. There's no way I can cover all of this, but I'm just showing it so that you know, like, yes, the deck is really complicated, but there's a lot of resources to help understand it if you're interested. And yeah, I love this deck. I don't personally bring it to tournaments, but it's the deck that I have the most fun playing out of any deck in the format. Yes, you could slam Atali in this list. Absolutely. Do, 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 do. So I am, in terms of Grape Shot, I am personally not running Grape Shot, but it is a very powerful card. I mean, the storm aspect of it is powerful, and it just in general being able to staple storm as a keyword, which makes it a combo piece, onto interaction, which makes it helpful for controlling the game. It makes it a very powerful card, and it's tutorable by Spellseeker, importantly. No song creation. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple people who are on song creation, but it's not very common. The main issues are basically that opponents are forced to counter it, and it doesn't necessarily win you the game, and it's easier to counter than other threats. Anything else? Is it better than Rogthras Polykraken? I don't have experience with Rogthras Polykraken, but I mean, personally, I think it is. There's actually, I remember, seeing some of the develops in Rogthras, kind of borrowed some of the tech from us. So like Displacer Kitten wasn't really played before in Rogthras, and now they do, which was interesting to see. This doesn't work. Force Wells. What turn is Spectre's variant typically winning? So I would say from my experience that the deck is typically winning turn 3 or turn 4, but it's able to hold up interaction early to try to extend the game. It's pretty consistent about both developing a commander and holding up a piece of interaction turn 2. So it can, and it can hold up interaction turn 1 if it wants. It's a very patient deck, so it's despite the fact that it's not as fast, it can slow the game down and take advantage of that very effectively. Yeah, and then there's other people who are running slightly more aggressive variants, like maybe they're running Storm Splitter, for example, which combos with Enduring Vitality to basically win the game. Every spell you cast is doubling the number of tappable creatures, which gets out of hand very, very quickly, then wins the game. There's other things that other lists are pivoting to win faster. Maybe they're running more fast mana and more big payoffs, that kind of thing. But in general, Teamer isn't ideal for winning quickly, but it is really, really good at grinding and slowing down the game. And as far as I can tell, that's it for Krark Thrasios. Yeah, I'm happy
Krark
to.
Thrash might have been a bit too complicated for a really intricate graph.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it would if that meme with the guy at the whiteboard or whatever with all the pins and
Pepe
strings
Sylvia.
and all that. Yeah, that's what it would look like for sure. Yes, that one exactly. Yep.
Hi, I'm here for Kirk. I didn't actually write anything, But yeah, Timna Krark is probably the best mid-range non-blue deck in the format. It is really, really good at grinding. The Krark existing makes it so it's just really hard to interact with anything the deck does. Timna makes mulligans much easier. Not being in blue, it's not that much of an issue. Like, blue is a crutch, you don't need it. Just have silences. Oh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Here, this is the core list that we came up with. Do you want me to go over each card or just general decisions and stuff? Okay. This deck, its biggest strength is playing in mid-range games. It doesn't. It's definitely capable of turboing, but you want to be playing mid-range a lot more. A lot of the cards like support that. Ashling, unbelievable card. Green decks suck. Mayhem Devil, really good with all the treasure generation we have. It's a great control piece. You don't really want to be winning the game anytime before turn 4, I'd say. You should be going for turn 3 protected or turn 4 super protected. It's like, I don't know. I think the deck's pretty mid right now. At least my list is. The meta's a little bit too turbo for it. I wouldn't recommend playing it unless your locals are like super stacks heavy or mid-range heavy still. But with all the like semi-blue and stuff that's happening now, I think the deck's pretty mid.
So, what are some things you could do to sort of counteract turbo? Whilst it might not fit in the meta, what are some choices and decisions that, in a meta where turbo is present but not overbearing, what are some deck decisions that would help a player overcome that odd?
I don't know. Just like, this deck can't. It can do pretty much nothing against decks like Rogsai. You have to have. I guess there's some options like Frolicking Rogs is almost always a good play. Gut-shotting Rogs, gut-shotting Dorks, log salvaging any mana rocks. You basically want to keep your opponents as low resource as possible while you're developing your own board.
So, what sort of shift in the meta would we need to see Krark Timna shine again?
I don't know. I think people need to stop playing semi-blue. That's about the only thing. As soon as people stop playing semi-blue, they realize that the deck is horrible and it just folds to any piece of interaction. The deck's going to be really good again. But in its current state, since post-Steel City, I don't think the deck is very good.
Got it.
Yeah, sorry I didn't, like, prepare as much. I've been a little bit busy. Yeah. Timna is very good. I think losing Ristic Study doesn't really matter with a cheap attacker in Command Zone and Timna. Yeah, this deck mulligans very well. As far as actually, okay, please somebody else take over. I was not ready for
Okay.
this.
I've given the deck a few spins. I have not. I don't really play it often.
Okay,
but
put Purity Hippie in.
the times I did play it, I did find that it can just present win after win after win. Like you get stopped, and then next turn you just go for it again. And I feel like just grinding out the resources with Timna and keep putting out those wins, even if they get stopped, is a very strong part of the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, he's actually ready to talk.
Afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you guys. I'm over in the UK, so different time zone. But yeah, me and Chaka have basically been the two guys grinding this deck all year, from what I understand. Obviously, him over in the States and me in the UK. Both put up pretty good tournament results, I've got to say. I think we're both between 35%, 45% win rate, something like that, which is pretty respectable in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing was, so let me stream. You can't stream into this channel. Excellent, cheers. Yap size small. Yeah, absolutely. The man who calls himself the Master Yapper, unprepared. Yeah, it's just streaming that I can't do, so I want to share the screen. Share my screen. No, it's grayed out. I'll tell you what, if someone else just shoves that list up for me on their screen. Yeah, just posted it. There you go. That's my tournament list for this year. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so I think, to be fair, both mine and Shaka's lists have sort of developed symbiotically, across the pond from each other, sort of seeing what other metas are doing and how it adapts. I think the UK meta has consistently been more turbo this year than the US. So I do definitely agree it was better before, when we were able to grind into the longer mid games. I really don't disagree that I really do have to disagree that we fold to like early game stuff. I think we actually have a lot of early interaction available. If you go down to the instance here, things like Rollock, SWAT, Mog Salvage, Gut Shot, even surgical extractions as early as turn 1, turn 2 can be very disruptive. Allowing your blue farmers, your Rog size to go really deep into their combos, then surgical the one piece they actually needed for the win. Devastating. The amount of games I've managed to win with a turn 1 Krark into a deadly Rollock on the end step of turn 1 going into my turn 2, grab a Sisay's Bloom Tender, grab a Dork somewhere else, incredibly powerful. I think this deck that sets itself apart from the other Krark decks is it times of, rather than just grinding against the other decks, I find that it gaps them. It tries to set them actually behind and put us miles ahead. Rather than just grinding harder, I think we actually interact better. In terms of actual win cons, the main, I have a bit of a primer. It's work in progress, but it is sort of there. We have win cons there. So yeah, I have to talk to that very briefly. So yeah, vaguely, how does it play? Obviously, Timina wants friends to go to combat with. We've got a lot of solid attackers, some of which provide us more value, like Professional Facebreaker, Ragavan, Knuckles is a new addition as well. Very, very powerful. It's a more broken version of PFB, in my opinion. Just doesn't have the activated ability. We also have doublers, obviously, like Delny. I've personally been playing Go-Go as well recently, the mono red one. Crazy. 7 mana, have a Timna and a Go-Go on the same turn, doubling, draw 4, draw whatever. It's really, really strong. And then obviously the complement to complementary commander is Krark. So we have the normal sort of Krark package with things like Tavern Scoundrel, Stormkill Artist, Ashling, as Shaka said, incredibly powerful in this deck. Yeah, fuck green decks. Just copy any spell and they don't have a board anymore. And as you're storming, it's obviously providing you a lot of value. Sorry if you can hear my dogs. What else have we got? Smothering Tithe, probably the single most powerful card in the deck. Get a turn 1, turn 2 Tithe down. I'm surprised if you're losing that game. The other big sort of effect to write home about is fork effects, just in general. We run quite a few of them. I think we decided as core that we run Fork, Flare, and Fury Storm. But you can also run Reverberate, you can run Reprieve, which is the mono white one. There's a few ways to just achieve forks onto forks, have infinite Magecraft, either with Ashling or with Stormcone Artist, resulting in either infinite treasure or looting your entire deck with Ashling. Hopefully finding a way to stop it along the way. But incredibly powerful, sets you up into win on a split second. Copying something like a Chord or a Finale. I mean, if you can... the amount of times I've Fury Stormed a Chord for 4, winning on the stack right there, very, very strong. Grabbing, Storm Kiln, Mayhem Devil. So actual win cons. Yeah, we are, I'd say, sort of primarily a Breach deck, looking for that to be the ultimate end. Citadel, probably the other one card win con as such. Just get one in play, start flipping through the deck. We have PFB and Backside of Bergie, Horn of Halfnell to really eat through it. What does Emrakul do for you? We'll get to Emrakul. Wheel and Orc is obviously a win for us. Praetor's Grasp, very powerful card. We can quite often, just eat through our library. I mean, the same way as you mentioned earlier with doubling a tutor, doubling a Tainted Pact on Silas, we can do the same thing. We double a Tainted Pact, empty our library, cast the Praetor's Grasp, find a Thoracle. A few lines along that. Emrakul is awesome. Definitely worse in a turbo meta. I would recommend if you're in a more turbo meta playing Adnors over Emrakul. I think you've got to pick one of them. But we make mana like there's no tomorrow. Double, triple a ritual, loop it through Breach, whatever. You're getting to 13 mana, or I'd say on average you're probably actually spending 8 on Emrakul, which is not hard to do. You could do it on turn 3. If if you've got a turn 1 Ristic against you, by turn 3 they should be looking at a win. That could be your win. Emrakul's an incredibly powerful card. Definitely hard to play. You need to have a in-depth knowledge of your meta and what you're playing into, and understanding of how your opponent's decks are able to win. Because as we say, every win apart from Thoracle can probably be used in your favor to win the game. What else have we got? The only instant speed win, that's the biggest sort of drawback of this deck, is lack of instant speed wins. Some people, I don't think Shaka's currently on it. We've sort of been off and on it over the year. Saw in Half is basically our only instant speed win. Dualcaster, Saw in Half, and then either with Gutshot or Orcish Bowmasters. Definitely not the strongest instant speed win in the world. You don't need it. The one thing I really like about it, though, is that you can automatically get into it off of Ashling. Get your endless Ashling triggers going. As you go through your cards one at a time, just get Dual Master, Saw in Half, and Gutshot on the stack, and it works itself out. You can also do the same with Pinnacle Monk. Pinnacle Monk and Saw in Half, and any of the rituals will net you infinite mana. Do what you like from there. Obviously, yeah, we mentioned Magecraft quickly. Biggest weaknesses, lack of instant speed wins. We feed the ever-living shit out of a Ristic Study player, but that's fine. We'll just Emrakul them. Generally, as with all Krark decks, we fight very well through counter magical interaction. I think this deck fights particularly well through it because the fork effects. Ignore the counter magic, just fork your own effect back on top of the stack. Even easier. Probably even more so than Krark Thras, we probably struggle with overextending. We really need to establish that board state. We want lots of good attackers down. We like some effect doublers down. A good Toxic Deluge ends our game. It really does. Luckily, not many people play it. In terms of mulls and game plan, as Shaka said, this deck can mull incredibly low, to be honest. You can go down to a 3. You know, if you see a bad 4, go to a good 3. You'll find it. Just find some mana and a ritual, double a ritual, and we're away.
Heresy.
Yeah, honestly, it's much better than you think. This deck is so resilient. Generally, our curve is pretty low. You know, there's only a few big boys in it, like Emrakul, Citadel. So you're going to have something to play on turn 2 almost every game. Personally, yeah, I try to go for an early Citadel quite often, or look for some kind of Magecraft line. I took this deck to the UK Championships this year. That was last month. Did pretty well. I ended up top 40. Could have got top 16. My top 40 game, I kept a turn 2 Citadel, and the other player in seat 1, I was in seat 2, player in seat 1 plays a Vexing Warble. So, but this deck definitely has the ability to be presenting wins as early as turn 2, and then just grind very, very well into the mid game. Yeah, I think that's about it. Like I said, better into a more mid-range meta, but definitely does not struggle in the current turbo meta, in my opinion. I mean, against decks like Ral, everyone's in the same boat. I think if they're going to send it on turn 1, what you're going to do, but this definitely has the ability to interact against some of the turbo-ish decks. Maybe not the fastest ones in the world, but yeah, overall a lot of fun. I enjoy it immensely. The other thing I probably have failed to mention is the silence effects. Incredibly powerful. The reason we're in Mardu. My list is currently on 6 of them. I think Shaq's the same. We have Grand Abolisher, Renge Captain, and Voice. And then we have Silence, Orim's Chant, and Revel in Silence. All of which are irreplaceable, in my opinion. If there was another instant speed silence, we'd be running it immediately. It's the most powerful effect we have. Stop opponents winning, stop them from interacting with you. It fits everything you want in the game. Yeah, I think, unless I've forgotten anything, tell me if I have Shaka. I think that's it. That's our little model pile. That's it. Excellent. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, to be honest, this deck's been a bit of a joint effort, I would say. I think I can't speak for Shaka, but I've certainly been inspired by his list when he makes changes. I think he may have been the same for me. We recently changed off Rev into Knuckles. Sorry, took me a little bit to be convinced by that one. I really liked Rev, but Rev, if you don't know, when you move to combat, give a creature Death Touch. I loved giving it to Ashling or Orcish Bowmaster. It was one of the most satisfying things you could possibly do. I had to be really convinced to cut it from the deck in order to put Knuckles in instead, but it is definitely better. It's refunding 2 treasure itself the turn he comes down. He's making unbelievable amounts of value. I haven't won with the secondary effect yet, the Treasure Hunter effect, but it may still happen.
I think Krark Timna is one of those decks where just one thing needs to change. Like the meta needs to shift a little bit, or a few cards need to be printed, or just that one little thing, and then mwah,
we're solidly tier 2 right now, yeah. But I would say that we're definitely on the better end of tier 2. I can spike games from tier 1 players fairly easily. All right, thanks, guys.
You both did a great job. Gladly.
You're welcome.